Hi everybody, Matt Bernier taking a look at stakes action Saturday afternoon at Delaware Park. Race number 8, 3-year-olds going 1.125 on the turf course. The field for the Grade 3 Kent Stakes. Before we dive into the entire field, I encourage you to head on over to drf.com/bet. You can take a look at all the latest offers for new DRF Bet subscribers. Again, drf.com/bet is the address. Here's the field of 9 3-year-olds going 9 furlongs on the turf course at Delaware on Saturday afternoon. It's really an interesting race, and I think we should start off with the big name in this field. That's the number 5 Untamed Domain for Graham Motion. Jose Ortiz has the mount. I've been a little bit disappointed, to be brutally honest, with his 3-year-old campaign because he had shown so much promise as a 2-year-old, and he's just come back and been okay as a 3-year-old. Now, he has been facing the best of his generation, especially when you go back to the Pennine Ridge most recently. And that's kind of the big race where you needed to make a decision. I was incorrect looking at the Pennine Ridge a little bit with some side-eye leading into last week's Belmont Derby, and all that happened was the exacta was repeated, where Catholic Boyne analyzed that they ran 1-2. But you can even take it a step further and go to the third-place finisher, Channel Cat. He came back and earned a 90 in the Belmont Derby. So Untamed Domain has been facing the best 3-year-olds. There's really no question about it in this field. The question comes down to, what kind of price are you going to get? And do you think that he's going to take a step forward? Because he might have to in order to win a race like this. Untamed Domain, he makes plenty of sense in here for Graham Motion, but at the same time, I'm not sure that he's the kind of horse that I'm running in line to go and bet in a spot like this. Let's talk about the inside runner. I think Carrick is an interesting runner for Tom Morley. We're going to take a look. This is a positive formulator fact for Tom Morley. Over the past year, turf winner last out in route races, 4 for 10, 8 in the money with a 287 ROI. This is a horse that debuted for a maiden claiming tag, $40,000 just 2 starts back. And okay, didn't beat much in that field, but did so really, really impressively. Did everything professionally. Comes back in a starter allowance race. Really, I had no knocks about it. He sat just off of a pretty hot pace. You look at those Timeform U.S. color codings as far as the fractions are concerned. They were hot throughout. He took over and finished well. John Velasquez is named here. Both those starts, also worth noting, they were against older horses. I think Carrick makes a lot of sense in here, and he could work out a very, very nice trip. The number 2 horse is another horse that is on the upswing, on the up and up as far as talent is concerned and what they've accomplished on the racetrack. That's Hot Springs for Steve Asmussen. 2 starts back, broke his maiden against older horses at Churchill Downs, going 1 mile and a 16th. Did so really without ever breaking a sweat. But then he comes back in the non-winners of one other than, again, against older horses. And as good as he looked that day, I hated that for essentially the final better part of 1/8 of a mile. He was on his left lead. Now, doesn't mean that he can't win a race like this, but I do wonder, from a speed figure standpoint, he's paired up Beyer tops of 86. I usually think that that's going to sort of lead to a forward move, but I would just be a little bit more curious to see, boy, if he had done everything professionally in that most recent start, I would be more intrigued with him here. I think he's going to take quite a bit of money in this spot, and there's just a part of me that I don't love what I had seen in that race. From a speed figure standpoint, he makes all the sense in the world, but just mechanically, I didn't love it. If he wins, I won't be surprised. I'll probably use him defensively in any sort of a multi-race wager, but I picked him 4th in here as far as the race itself is concerned. The number 3 horse is Duke de Calais. That's a first-time starter here in North America anyway for Christophe Clement. Now, Clement has had some success with these types in the past, but I have a couple things that sort of bother me about a horse like this. All of his starts, this is a rarity over here anyway, all 6 starts, they've all been at 10 furlongs. And 5 of them have been on the synthetic. The 1 start on the grass really didn't do any running. I know that was over good soft conditions over in France, but he's 3 for 5 on synth and he's 0 for 1 on turf, and he never really picked his feet up on the turf. There's a part of me that wonders, is this distance going to be too short for him? And really, until they get over here, you don't know what you've got. I think this is a pretty good group of 3-year-olds on the grass. So I would need to make sure that I got a pretty significant number on a horse like this before I dove in. And even at that point, I'm not really thrilled with the form that he's bringing over here. He's got the synthetic and it's going longer. To me, this is going to be one that I would just want to sit back and wait and see what we get from Duke de Calais. That's the number 3 horse. First time North America for Christophe Clement. Here's a positive formulated fact for the number 4 horse. This is Gunnison going out for Kelly Rubley. Past 2 years, turf winner last out route races. 8 for 31, 14 in the money with a 320 ROI. Most recently, pretty impressive, I thought. Victory in the tail of the Cat Stakes at Monmouth Park over good going. The second place finisher, Strike Me Down, came back and earned an 83 Beyer in the Queen's Plate in his most recent start. The 5th place finisher was the next out winner with a 73 Beyer speed figure. I have to be honest, I thought the 2 starts back was pretty solid as well. From a speed figure standpoint, a little bit light, and there were 3 other next out winners in that heat 2 starts back at Laurel Park. They earned buyers of 77, 75, and 77 respectively. I think Gunnison is a little bit intriguing though, and I think he might slip through the cracks from a betting standpoint. He fits as far as buyers are concerned if you believe that tail of the cat, and he also fits from a Timeform US standpoint. I think Gunnison is interesting, especially with that positive formulator effect for Rubley. We talked about Untamed Domain a little bit. Let's talk about the number 6 horse, Golden Brown. And for Golden Brown, let's consult the Timeform US Pace Projector because they have the number 6 horse out on the lead just ahead of the number 8 horse, Blame the Rider. Golden Brown in the Dan Horn most recently, that was a state-bred stakes race down at Monmouth Park for Jersey breds. It was also against older horses. First time going long, first time going turf for this son of Awfully Wild for Pat McBurney. And the horse that he only finished a half length behind was a pretty good older horse named Irish Straight. He's the older brother of Irish Warcry. Irish Straight has won graded stakes races in the past. This is a really interesting spot that they chose to run him there. He went off at 16-1, and I thought he finished really impressively considering that was his first time going 2 turns and his first time on the grass. You look at it from a buyer standpoint, highest last out buyer in the field with an 87 Timeform, the raw number, a 110, highest last out figure in the field as well. I don't know that he's going to be on the lead like the pace projector suggests. I do think the 8 horse who we'll talk about momentarily is going to clear off to the front, but I think Golden Brown could sit just off. And if you actually believe that effort in the Dan Horn, like I kind of do, Golden Brown is really, really interesting, and I think he's going to be a square price in this race because he's not a well-known name. I was impressed with that effort, and if he replicates that and can get out to 9 furlongs, which I think he can, I think Golden Brown is really interesting at a decent number. The 7 is Archigelos. This is a horse from Michael Dickinson. I liked him as a 2-year-old, and unfortunately, I just don't think he's taken a step forward here as a 3-year-old. This is the little brother to Big Brown, I believe. He's a nice horse. There's really nothing wrong with him, but again, from a speed figure standpoint, it just doesn't seem like he's progressing the way that you would like to see a 3-year-old at this time of year progress. For what it's worth, he ran in that Stanton, the local prep for this race back on June the 13th here at Delaware Park. The winner came back and earned a 74 buyer. In his next start, the second place finisher up the ante returned to earn a 95 in a winning effort. And the 4th place finisher earned an 81. So at least the form of that race looks respectable. But again, until he runs faster, I'm going to look at him and say he's probably going to be a bit of an underlay, and it seems like he takes money in each one of his starts. The number 8 horse is the one we spoke about a little bit anyway. That's Blame the Rider, coming in from the West Coast for Doug O'Neill. Mario Gutierrez with the mount. Most recently, no match for River Boyne, but River Boyne is a really talented 3-year-old out on the West Coast. The Rainbow Stakes, he got out there, set the fractions, couldn't quite hang on, but he finished a good second. 2 starts back in the Singletary. He got the job done pressing the fractions throughout. Now, it's worth noting, basically that half-mile call, they had that color-coded blue, meaning it was a little bit of a softer pace. I think this is an interesting horse. I just don't think he is truthfully as good as some of these other runners as far as the 3-year-olds on the East Coast are concerned. I do think he is a pace presence, though, and if he clears off, I think he's going to make the front, and I think the 6 is going to actually be the one that takes up the stalking trip as opposed to what the Timeform US Pace Projector would suggest, where they have it going the opposite way. Blame the Rider. I don't think he is a win candidate. I think he's best used underneath, if at all. And the number 9 horse is Way Early for George Weaver. This is a horse 2 starts back. I wasn't all that impressed with his effort in a state-bred race up at Aqueduct in New York. He finished a decent second behind Morrison, and Morrison was out there setting the pace throughout. So, okay, maybe it was a little bit too much to ask of him to go and get that horse. Most recently in the Penn Mile, though, he was one of the few horses that actually finished with some interest, and he looked okay down the lane. The problem is I feel like it was a bit of an optical illusion, and sort of the form of the Penn Mile has left me wanting a little bit more, where you see the 6th place finisher. I understand Therapist was the next out winner with an 85 buyer, but Hawkish was, he at least had an excuse for that effort in the Belmont Derby. He was wide every step of the way, but Colton, Mississippi, we kind of know what he is at this point in his career. And some of the other horses, Maraud, he ran okay in the Belmont Derby. I'm not thrilled with the Penn Mile right now. And then you see there's an equipment change. Now, normally, blinkers on, you see just the raw numbers at the bottom of the racing form. That's a positive move for George Weaver. When you dive into Formulator and you can chop things up a little bit, you end up getting a negative number like this. Over the past 5 years, turf, first-time blinkers and route races, 1 for 23.7 in the money with a 64-cent ROI. Way Early is just the kind of horse that, you know what, I think he's going to take a little bit of sneaky money in here, and I'll just be against him. If he wins, I'll lose. Maybe I'll use him underneath if I play some sort of an exotic wager. But Way Early, I want him to prove to me that he's actually as good as some of these other horses in this spot. So it's a fascinating race. You can go a few different ways in this year's edition of the Kent Stakes down at Delaware Park. My pick in here, I'm going to go with the 6 Golden Brown. The New Jersey bred for Pat McBurney. I thought that was a really impressive effort in the Dan Horn. First time 2 turns, first time turf, taking on older horses. And he ran into a pretty darn good older horse in Irish Straight, and he gave him a little bit of a threat late. I thought it was a good effort. I think he takes a step forward here in the second start going long. I like that they're going to throw him right into the deep end. This is a really ambitious spot. Based on what he had done, I have no real knocks. Highest last out buyer in the field, highest last out raw time form US rating. I'll go with the 6 Golden Brown in order, 6-1-5-2 for me in the 8th race at Delaware Park Saturday afternoon, the Grade 3 Kent. Again, if you're playing this race or any of the other races at Delaware Park, including the Delaware Handicap on Saturday afternoon, DRF Bets is the way to do it. Head on over to drf.com/bet. You'll get all the details for a new DRF Bets account. Get some sort of a bonus, whatever else it may be. drf.com/bet is the address. Scheduled post time for the Grade 3 Kent at Delaware Park Saturday afternoon. Race number 8 is 4:45 Eastern. Best of luck.